Welcome back to CTN. I'm your host, Robert Van Sluten. Let's get started. In the last episode, I started introducing TableView Controller. And the one thing I did not mention is the fact that table views have what is referred to as style. They can be grouped or plain. This one is grouped. And this ties to the notion of sections and rows. You notice there's a division here between 29 and 30. This table is grouped in sets of 10. So 0 to 9 is the first group and 10 to 19 is the next group. And there's a division, there's a separator here, and this separator can be modified, color and style and so on and so forth. Let's go to the next slide and we'll dig into this in somewhat more detail. Table views, UITableView has a property and it's style. And there's an enumeration list that define it. It could be plain or it could be grouped, as I indicated. Now, one thing to note is that this property is read-only. So in other words, it's set when the object is created and cannot be modified. There can be several reasons why a property is read-only. Sometimes they're calculated behind the scenes, it's not real, or other times, like for instance, the label in a cell is read-only because the idea is you access the label and you change the text value. But in this case, the style has to be set at creation. Now, if you take a look at the initializer for a UITableView for initializing a table view, you have a standard frame, it is a view, and you also have a style parameter. So if you're actually creating the table view programmatically rather than storyboard, you would pass in what style you want. However, we're not doing that. We're using the storyboard, and initialization when you have objects of the storyboard is never invoked. That's an important point. You could implement a wake from nib and change the style, but we don't do that either. Let's go back to Xcode. The way in which the style is being controlled in our case is via the attribute inspector for the table view. Now if I go ahead and stop the app, if I go over to the inspector for the table view, you'll notice there's style and it's set to grouped. I'm going to change that to plain. I'm going to rerun. You notice it is no longer grouped. And this is even the case when there are multiple sections defined in the code. And we're going to take a look at the controller.m file in the next slide. Okay, we're in tablecontrol.m, which is the delegate for the table view controller for both protocols. And you'll notice at the top they do provide an initialization method. Now in this particular case, since we're using the storyboard, this never gets invoked, which I had mentioned earlier. To show some of the modifications that I had made to this, which is different than the previous application in the previous episode, we now have 10 sections. And for each section, regardless of which one it is, there are 10 rows. Now, when I change the style to plain, this becomes irrelevant and it's the same as it would be otherwise. To get the text label generated like it was previously. A calculation was required, though. I had to take the section, multiply it by 10, and then add the row number to make it so that you just get the consecutive integers. That's it for the modifications. There are two methods that have been added here, and this relates to when various cells actually get selected. And we'll talk about this in the next slide. Well, it would be reasonable to ask, well, now I have a table, can I actually select items in the table? And there are a couple modes of selection. There's not being able to select at all. There's single selection, which is our current mode, or it'll just go to the next one. Now if you take a look at the log down here in the bottom, I did add some information about which row is being selected, row and section. And how this works is in the UITableView delegate, there are two methods which tell you which section and row are being selected and deselected. There's several others, but these are the key ones. And I added these methods to the controller file and outputted log statements for selection and deselection. Now I mentioned the fact that there is this notion of multi-selection, and the way in which you can get into that mode is if I stop this and I bring the storyboard back up, and I change the selection mode from single selection to multiple selection. So I'm changing a property. If I rerun this, there we go. Just forget to stop it. I can now multi-select, and I'll deselect. Select up here, down there, deselect. And I'm getting the appropriate log statements. That's it for now. This rather simple app will be on the website. And stay tuned for the next episode. It's a porcupine in a tree. Thanks for watching.